Welcome to my tier list, where we will be looking at some of Hollywood's most famous vampires and ranking them by how scary they are. Ooh, spooky. Of course, we're doing this because Renfield is coming out in theaters this weekend. And guess what? Nicolas Cage's Dracula is on the list. So enough playing around. Let's go ahead and get to the list. Okay, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start with the tier list. We're going to start off with our F tier, which is going to be that family-friendly tier. So these are vampires who really don't need to worry about being scary at all. Our first one in this tier is going to be Dracula from Hotel Transylvania, which is Adam Sandler. Obviously, it's a movie made for kids. It's not supposed to be scary. A fun Dracula. I actually really like this version of the character as an overprotective dad. He is a lot of fun, but definitely not scary. Here's a throwback for some 90s kids. Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire. It's a Disney Channel original movie. Dimitri is the name of this vampire. And you know what? Not scary. Maybe when you're a little kid, you're like, oh no, it is. It's so, but it's not. Trust me. Next up on the list is going to be Morbius. Goodness gracious, what a memorable vampire. Man, this movie just came out last year. Doesn't it feel like forever ago? It sure does for me. The only scary thing about this movie is how bad it is. So yeah, he's down there in F tier. And then finishing out that family-friendly tier is going to be Dracula from the movie Monster Squad. Now, this movie is from the 80s, so you gotta know that going in. It might be a little extreme for some of the younger kids in your family, but overall, I think it's all right for them. And even though this version of Dracula is fighting a bunch of kids, he definitely doesn't go easy on them, that's for sure. And he's going to be kind of riding the line, but I'm not going to be moving him up into D tier. That's going to move us up into the D tier, which I'm calling a little spooky. These are vampires that, maybe get a little dark and you don't want to have your kids watch them. Maybe not for reasons that they're scary. Calling that bottom one family friendly made it so there's some vampires that even though they don't get too scary, they definitely shouldn't be down there. So let's go ahead and start with one of those, and that is Vampire Cop Ricky. He's a horn dog, right? And so that's going to keep him out of the bottom one. He turns into like a superhero and stuff by the end of this movie. He gets bitten by a mosquito that drank off of a vampire and then got on an airplane and flew from Transylvania to South Korea. There are weirder ways to get powers. I mean, it makes more sense than the way Morbius becomes a vampire. So next up is going to be Vampirella. She's not going to go very high when it comes to being scary, but we can't put her down that family friendly because she's definitely falling into that sexy vampire, category. So she's going to have to just stay down here. And so are the vampires from the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie. Now, the TV show, they kind of went with way more makeup looking like Klingons, really. I mean, I've always had a problem with the way that those vampires look. But in the movie, they're way more like kind of elfish. Like, look at David Arquette here. He is not threatening. I know he's got sharp teeth, but just look at him. He's not scary at all. I was trying to keep the list mostly with people that actually just suck blood. But these guys, the Sleepwalkers, right, they are sucking life force out of people, particularly young female virgins. But they're cat people. They're like werecats, really, more than vampires, but like they get called vampires and everything. I don't know, man. Stephen King is definitely weird at times, and this is one of those. I like these guys because their biggest weakness as cat people is regular cats, because regular cats can see through their human disguises and everything. So, not scary. The movie is, well, I mean, it's not good. There's a reason that most of you have probably not heard of it. It's not a very good movie. Now, a movie that is pretty good, but is not that scary when it comes to comparing vampires is going to be Interview with a Vampire. The only thing that kind of moves it up this far in the tier is the fact that there are the possibilities of little kid vampires, right? Kirsten Dunst in this movie as a little kid vampire is pretty scary, but she's kind of evened out by, Brad Pitt just being like the nicest vampire. I mean, maybe the nicest vampire I can think of in an adult movie ever. So, no, good movie though. I recommend it. Now, a movie that doesn't have a very fun vibe and is actually really bad is Dracula 2000. And Gerard Butler is going to be our Dracula in that movie. And he's just not good. This movie kind of lacks any creative thought And the best thing that you can really say about it is that it's definitely got a soundtrack that fits the time it came out. So if you like really got a hankering for some music from the year 2000, maybe this will just hit the spot for you. But as a scary vampire, nope, not so much. Now we're just bouncing back and forth when it comes to quality of movies here, because What We Do in the Shadows is fantastic. So funny. Great take on like all the different types of vampires that you see in movies and everything. But really, it's not scary. It's not really trying to be scary, though, either, so it's not really a strike against it. But I'm really just not going to be able to put it up higher at all. Then we're going to get to Underworld, and most of the vampires and stuff in this are not that scary at all, right? Everybody's looking like they're from The Matrix. They got pointy teeth. Again, kind of trying to be like cool, sexy vampires with guns, and they're fighting with swords. And but every once in a while, there's a few that have like wings and like look like scary creatures and everything, and at those points, though they're not really that scary, they look pretty cool, so that's why I'm happy to put them a little higher in this tier. And then we have Blade, very similar to Underworld in why it's ranked where it's at. Blade himself, half vampire, half person, the Daywalker. I kind of like how everybody explodes like when they get killed in these movies. I think the thing that pushes Blade up from Underworld is particularly the monsters, like the weird version of the vampires that are in Blade 2. So Guillermo del Toro coming in again with that creature design to really kind of push things up a little bit. Now in C tier, we're going to be calling this a good showing. Like it's a good representation of a vampire. There's a little bit of danger there. Now my first one on here is obviously probably going to be disagreed with by some people. I'm going to put the Cullens from Twilight in C tier, mostly because they are nice, but they're not perfect, right? Their niceness can lull you into a false sense of security. You get a paper cut, and then all of a sudden, one of them, I think his name's Jasper. Is that right? Am I pulling that from like the back deepest part of my brain? Jasper tries to eat you, and then everybody else has to like fight him because he's like a new vampire who just has got to eat like crazy. That little bit of extra tension just makes him a little bit scary. And I'm completely ready to catch heat for that one. So yeah, let me know in the comments. Hey look, it's Queen of the Damned. In this movie, it's like the queen of all the vampires, the one who like, you follow that ancestral tree back and this is who you're going to find. She's okay. Her power over the other vampires is, elevating her a little bit as a threat. And yeah, she's fine. Now for these next three, they're all kind of equal with each other. I don't really think one's better than the others, but there's definitely one that's like the most iconic, and so he's a little bit higher, but don't think that there's much room when it comes to like how scary any of these guys are. So first up, we've got Blacula from the blaxploitation movie Blacula. This is a black version of Dracula that was made in that era where blaxploitation movies were really big, and it was a good way to make movies cheap and make a lot of money off of them. And I like Blacula's design. Like, I love that he's got facial hair. I think the Dracula should have facial hair more often. I love his widow's peak. It really is aggressive. I love how far it's coming down. It's definitely like a Vegeta haircut. He deserves to be up there with these other two main Draculas that I'm going to mention, and I just really like to not have him be forgotten and not put on the list. Then we have Dracula from Dracula, made in 1931, but not the Dracula that was made in 1931 that you're probably thinking about. This is a Carlos Villarias who was making a Dracula movie in Spanish the same time they were making the original Universal Studios Dracula. Same sets, they would come in at night and make it, and so this guy's been around just as long as Bela Lugosi has, and so he's definitely got to be here. His eyes, man, are spooky. This version of Dracula where he's kind of suave and cool, I can definitely see where people might be a little bit afraid of him, and he's definitely iconic in that, and you can really kind of mold it and subvert what you get from this guy, but he's definitely not going to be going any higher than C tier. And then lastly, in C tier, we've also got Bela Lugosi himself, the original iconic version of the character. The voice, the look, it all comes back to this one. He's not particularly scary. In fact, I'm sure some people would argue not scary at all, but there's just something about him that makes me not be able to put him any lower than this. Then we're going to be getting up to the B tier, which I'm going to be calling a little creepy. And here are going to be those vampires that are just that next step up. So we're going to look at Van Helsing first. And I like Dracula in this one a lot. He's got a transformation, right? He turns into a giant bat guy. He's got his his bride's with him too, who are also scared with those big elongated mouths and the super sharp teeth. Is the performance from the guy as Dracula any better than the one I did at the beginning? Not really, not a whole bunch. But I think that the transformations and the monster versions of them go a long way, along with like kind of how they transform. And so, yeah, I like this one. I think it's good. Then we're going to have Count Orlok from Nosferatu, really going back here. Now we're talking originals. This guy's, I think, creepy. I think he looks creepy. I think that when you look at him, especially if you're like a kid and you're young, and you see this guy like on a poster, or if you're in a dark room and like you see a picture of him like in a book or something, I think it can mess with you. And so I think that it still holds up today as being weird. And, it's kind of been a little diluted, with the fact that it gets used in SpongeBob, right, in that one episode, and he's flickering the lights off and on. But I think overall it works because he's still creepy. Then we got the Lost Boys, right? Here's Kiefer Sutherland showing up. These are like some guys who don't want to grow up, right? And they're vampires, and they're hanging out by, like the seashore, and they're like on the docks, and they're like recruiting people to like join their club and everything. And I think he's got like a pretty good look. They're violent, right? It's pretty bloody and everything. Joel Schumacher, right? This is Batman Forever. This is Batman and Robin, and this is what he's doing before that. So I think they got a cool design. I know I was just kind of knocking on the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and these are kind of similar to that, but for whatever reason, I like these ones a little bit more. B tier is also where Nicolas Cage is going to land from the new movie Renfield. He's very funny, right? And the movie, I think, is a comedy more than anything else. But his Dracula still manages to be really threatening and does some pretty like grotesque things to people that make it so he still manages to be scary while still playing a very comedic version of the character. So this is kind of like my favorite middle ground in this. He's fantastic in this. I definitely recommend seeing it. Now we got Jerry the Vampire from the original Fright Night. Goodness, man, Prince Humperdinck from The Princess Bride as a charming vampire that lives next door to you. It's awesome. So good. Man, this movie is so fun. And on top of that, it's got a great vampire design. Plus, man, look at the poster for this movie. It is still to this day like unnerving. And the vampires in here, like the lady vampire looking like that. Oh, so good. Yeah, it can't be lower than this. And then finishing out the B tier, I got Christopher Lee from the Hammer horror films. It's just so bloody, right? His eyes are bloody. They're bloodshot. His mouth is always just like oozing super bright red blood. It looks like tomato soup, right? That he's just like dribbling out of his mouth. And he just seems evil and scary. There's a reason that this guy kept getting cast as evil characters later into his life, right? There's a reason he's Saruman. There's a reason he's Count Dooku. It's because he was Dracula, right? I mean, on top of a bunch of other things. He's obviously just a very good actor overall. But man, he just brings a presence to this that a lot of other people don't. And he just kind of is believable in a way, and like how evil he is. Now we're up into A tier, and we're going to get Jerry the Vampire again, but this time from the remake of Fright Night, which, here's a hot take, I actually think is better than the first one. Colin Farrell is great, and I think we're getting reminded of that more and more as time goes by, right? With his great performances in The Banshees of Inisherin. He's fantastic in The Batman as Penguin, just giving him these different characters, right? And in this, he gets to play like the hunky dude that he was getting cast as a lot, but he's also a scary vampire and like a burrowing vampire, which I like the idea of these different types of vampires that he digs holes underground and keeps his prey and everything down there. Plus, the way that his mouth all like crunches and everything as he opens it up to be able to like eat people is really kind of disturbing. I think that he's super great, and he's going to be in that A tier and deserve it. A tier is also where we're going to be finding the vampires from the movie From Dusk Till Dawn, right? This movie's got a big old switch in the middle of it. You're like, oh, this is some kind of crime movie. And then all of a sudden the bar that these people are hiding out at turns out to be, a place where a bunch of vampires live. And they just start eating everybody. And the vampires like kind of look like snakes. Some of them do. Danny Trejo is one of the vampires, which is always great. Danny Trejo should be a vampire in like every movie. I think it would always be beneficial to it. Overall, how violent they get and really just kind of their transformations into these like scary versions of themselves, I think really make it effective. And so A tier is where they got to be. And then finishing out A tier is going to be Gary Oldman as Dracula in Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Whew, man, he is great in this. He's having so much fun, and he plays pretty much every different kind of vampire and Dracula that you could imagine in this movie, right? He's suave, he's old, he's like the old-timey knight version of him. But then, man, he is a scary monster as well. I love it when Dracula can like turn into a wolf and turn into mist and all the different things that he does. His shadow is alive. This guy is just like too powerful. And like, I love vampires and Dracula in particular as a bad guy in things because of how strong he is. It's always a struggle for our heroes to be able to go up against them, and the more that is a factor in things, the more I enjoy it. And I think the more scary it makes them, like in a similar way to how like the Terminator is a scary thing because you just can't stop it. You can't stop Dracula. Now, that being said, they do stop Dracula, but hey, we stopped the Terminator too. So, and then that is going to take us up to the S tier, which I'm going to be calling Nightmare Fuel. Now with these vampires, these are, some things that even as like somebody who's really into horror, these versions of vampires can still kind of get under my skin a little bit and make me, a little uncomfortable. So first off, we have Let the Right One In, right? This is a little kid vampire. And the idea of an old soul and mind and just being trapped in this young body and all of the things that come along with that really lead to a movie that is, special, right? This is a very special movie. If you've never seen it, or the remake in English is pretty good too, but it's specifically the original, I definitely recommend you give it a try. And sure, like maybe like the cerebral, like thinking about, oh, this is kind of scary being trapped in a little body and all these things is one thing, but also she is just scary also. Like she does violent things in this movie that are frightening, and I love it. I think it's just very good, and I think it's definitely worth watching if you haven't yet. 30 Days of Night. These vampires are, they're supposed to be scary. They are scary. They're just dripping with blood at how much they are just devouring everything. They're not hiding at all. That's something vampires usually have to do. These guys are not hiding. They know that they're just gonna be able to pick off everybody in this town, and they're just ripping everybody up. Their eyes are black. Their teeth are like just sticking out like sharks, and it looks awesome. These guys are great. This is one of those movies that even like with the trailer, it would come on, and if somebody didn't like horror, they would need to maybe avert their eyes. Like I was around people that when this trailer would come on, they'd be like, let me know when it's over because I'm not interested in this. If a movie can do that with its designs for its creatures and everything, I think that it definitely deserves to be pretty high up on a list like this. And then finally, we are going to finish out with the scariest vampires ever, the Volturi from the Twilight Saga. Now you might be saying, Seth, there's no way that these are scarier, but I just want you to imagine for a second, organized religion vampires. Need I say more? These guys are the things that vampires are afraid of. So, come on. And that is going to finish up the tier list. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you enjoyed this list, don't forget to check out some of the other lists that I've done before. And also don't forget to subscribe. I really appreciate it. We're getting so close to 1,000 subscribers. Let's get there really soon. I'll see you when I put out my next one. Until then, you take care, and I will see you later. Bye.